a video today that I posted on my phone. What's up, everybody? I want to say thank you guys for hopping on. I appreciate you guys taking the time out. We are here to, Bryce, yeah, I would love for you to do that. We are here to talk about some things in terms of throwing mechanics, some ways that we think that you can become an improved thrower, work on creating ground force, generating rotational energy, and becoming a more precise passer in terms of creating energy, being consistent, and doing those things. Like I said a couple minutes ago, I have Austin on and Caleb on. Austin is someone who used to work with me who I think has done a tremendous job, not only studying rotation, but understanding why he improved so much. He was probably one of the most improved players that I worked with who started at a later age than anybody. So he started after he'd already got to college, received a college scholarship. And he hadn't had a private coach before. His throwing motion was a little bit wacky, and we tried to fix some things really, really quickly. I think we made some real strides. Then he got with Caleb, who is a rotation expert. Caleb was actually coaching with Arizona State baseball program before this thing all went crazy, and he was doing the hitting instruction. So a lot of the reason that I can connect so much about playing quarterback and hitting a baseball is because Caleb and a lot of the things that he's done with us and a lot of our top athletes, from Deshaun Watson, Dwayne Haskins, Jalen Hurts. He was really, really instrumental with him. Helped out a lot with Ben DiNucci and Drew Brown, as well as a couple other guys we've worked with. So these are two guys that I trust a lot. They do a really good job. And I think that they put together a really good presentation for us tonight, so that we can understand a little bit about what we're teaching, and then we'll go into the balls, how they work, and some things you can do with those as well. So without any further ado, I would like to say what's up to Austin and Caleb.
Thanks for having us, Q. What's going on to everybody out there? We just want to kind of talk to you tonight about really maximizing what you can do with your throwing motion and getting the most out of yourself. As Q said, I was just a quarterback, and a lot like you guys out there probably watching, and there's quarterbacks I saw out there that weren't as big as me or weren't as strong as me, and I always wondered, why can't I get more on the ball? Why do they throw with higher velocity and all these different things? And I had known Caleb my whole life, and he was going on a similar journey with baseball. So we kind of put our heads together and figured quite a bit out on our own, at least we think so. So we kind of put something together today that piggybacks off of the program that Quincy and Caleb have kind of been promoting the past few years with QB Takeover. And so you can see the real life and the game implications from these drills. And these are all drills you can do right now. Obviously, this is an unfortunate situation for everybody. You may not have access to receivers. You may not have access to a field right now. But really all you need is these balls, these medicine balls, and then a wall. And like Quincy said, you can do all the quarterback drills that you would do with Quincy and that he puts up on Twitter with these balls. So I think this is a great opportunity to use this to get that 1% better as opposed to your competition and all the other guys out there. So really kind of the point of this is just getting everybody to maximize their gifts and their talents. So I'll kind of kick this thing over to Caleb and we'll get going.
Yeah, guys. So if there's any questions you guys have throughout this process, go ahead and type them out so you don't forget them. And then after we get to the end of the segment, we'll go back and answer all the questions. So let's go ahead and dive right into it.
Let's see. I'll share the screen. I'm trying to share the screen right now just to let you guys in. What happened there?
And I'll kind of pop in as they're explaining and talk about some of the things that we talked about. This is when Austin was on spring break in college. We were working on the ability to stop at the end of a drop or top of a drop, put his foot in the ground. And this is when I was teaching throwing a lot differently. And I was talking about a lot more in terms of creating a bunch of energy and to spin through and less about stopping and creating torque. And you can see that right there with his foot.
So if we go back, this is kind of how I first found Austin. And part of the theory in baseball is you want to look at what the greats are doing, the guys that are playing on TV, and you want to get as much like them as you can, knowing how you move and knowing who you are as a player. So when I first saw Austin, I realized that what he was doing was not optimal. It looked like he was trying to move like somebody he wasn't, and he wasn't getting the most out of his potential. So if we break this down, we can kind of see Austin's pushing hard off that back foot. It's more of a quad-based push. He has to push with the lower half, and then his upper half has to push right after. There's the push. And whenever Austin and I first started working together, we went ahead and, because I'm a baseball guy, we got the radar gun out. And he was sitting around 47 miles an hour, and his deep ball was around 53 yards. And then I made a little program as we kind of try to learn together the things that are most efficient for football that translates. And so if we go another step farther, we can see our first drill here. And this right here is what we like to call the off-arm drill. And it's really huge for arm action to really teach the quarterbacks how to lead with the elbow first in order to create that whip that we all call it. And this is also going to translate to that off-platform throw that we make to our off-arm side.
Right. Essentially, for a left-handed quarterback, this would be you going to your right side, and for a right-handed quarterback, this would be going to your left. This is Aaron Rodgers right here.
And this is how these drills are going to translate in the game. And now we're going to back up a little bit. We're going to break it down as much as we can here.
So if that's a live action there, guys, them moving up and avoiding to their left and staying on the move. This is how we want to kind of translate that to a stable single motion drill that you guys can work on at home on a wall.
And this is a drill that I see a lot of quarterback trainers and a lot of guys warm up with, but you really got to break it down and focus on the quality of movement here. And I see a lot of guys get their hips outside of their foot here. They kind of lose that balance, and they kind of lose that spiral energy that he's created here. And at this point, he's got the rubber band pulled back tight, and he's just going to use his arm to really maximize his lower half.
And for all coaches and players out there, this is something that you can easily implement with a football when you're warming up before a training session or a practice or even a game. It's really about not just going through it and getting your arm loose, really focus on what's going on with your body and how you're feeling. So right here, as I'm doing this drill, I'm trying to feel all that energy in my back hip. So my left hip, if you're right-handed, your right hip. And you just want to hold that energy as long as you can. And that's going to create the resistance you need to maximize your throw.
And so we see Rodgers doing the same movement pre-game, low effort, really focusing on that quality of movement, making sure his lower half's working right, and he's getting the most force with the least amount of effort.
Justin Murphy, I see you ask, why did he push off his back foot? I would love for you to type in exactly what moment you were asking, why did he push off his back foot? Were you talking about with Austin, who was doing the drill previously, or when he was doing the drill with the medicine ball? If you type it out, we're going to keep pushing along. If you type it out, I'll make sure I keep my eye on the chat, and I'll see it and I'll answer it the best way I can.
Now we got Dwayne here, and Dwayne's a guy that we went through these drills with every day. And the purpose of doing all of these is to really break it down where you get in the game. You don't have to think about how your hips are working. You've done so many reps the correct way, focusing on that quality of movement, that it becomes natural once the lights turn on.
That's kind of the thing that initially was kind of off-putting about this whole throwing with medicine balls and all these things is actually in 7th grade, I changed my shot in basketball. And for anyone who's ever played basketball, you go from like the 2-hand push shot to really shooting it with one hand. And that's a transition of a summer where you get really bad at shooting the basketball, but eventually you come out of it and you're better. And I told Caleb when we were starting this, I was like, man, I don't have that type of time. I don't have a whole off season to waste. I got to be ready to compete in the fall for a starting position. And the implementation of these balls really expedited that process. I was able to start feeling results and start getting better and improving within simply just 2 or 3 sessions. And that was something I really, really enjoyed. And I think Caleb can go a little bit deeper on why exactly that happens as opposed to throwing a football and why we chose these medicine balls.
Right. When you change the implement, it talks to a different part of your brain. Your brain is wired as soon as you touch a football, it knows this movement pattern. There's a lot of research and papers and science about muscle memory, but it's really your body knows movement patterns. So as soon as it gets the football in your hand, it makes you want to do what you have been doing. Kind of similar to the Tim Tebow thing. He worked on changes arm action, thousands and thousands of reps, but as soon as he got back in the game, his brain went back to his old way of doing it. But when your body is working in balance, the most natural way, that's the way it's going to pick because that's the most efficient way. So that's kind of what we're trying to train with all these little drills. It might look like something you've done before, but there's a very defined objective whenever we're doing all of these drills. So if go ahead, Q.
My bad. So that's the same thing that would happen to Tim Tebow. So they kept talking about Tim Tebow changed his throwing motion, got it fixed. But every time he got back to the game, he would get back to the same old movement patterns. When you try and fix a problem with the same thing that created it, it often brings you back to the same problems. But as you look at, I'm just going to start talking a little bit about this next throw. This sequencing is something that you would like to get to no matter what you're doing throwing wise. You see how his hips loaded and the ball's in the equal opposite position. That'll happen usually right before foot strike. But this is going to be a throwing side drill, and I'll let Austin and Caleb dive into that a little bit better.
Right. Once again, as you're going through these drills, as you're looking at these, and a lot of these drills you may have already do. This is just a simple, I don't know if you can see me here, just get that lead shoulder at the target there and just feel that energy in your hip. Right now, going back to this video right here, all that energy is in my back hip, really kind of my right or my left butt cheek there, the posterior chain. You know, you're in the weight room, your coaches are talking about squat, you know, getting your heels. You want to put all the weight on your bigger muscles, which is your posterior chain, the back of your body. So your hamstrings, your glutes, all of those are the strongest muscles in your body. So use those. You want to use that to create the most energy you can to get the most velocity on the football.
So when we're breaking this movement down, kind of the point of everybody does this drill a lot. I see most of the guys do it wrong, but my objective for this drill, the arm side work is what I call it, is to be able to create as much power as you can in a small space. So you see guys like Rogers do it very efficiently. He's able to create a lot of power with not a lot of space around him. And that's kind of what we're trying to train here. And this throw is also going to translate to that off-platform arm side throw as well.
So right-hander going right, left-hander going left.
Now, this is, like we said, this is a drill we kind of tried to put in Dwayne's mind, ingrain that movement pattern in Dwayne, where in the game it would just come naturally. And if you look right here, it looks just like he's doing that same arm side drill.
So if anybody saw the post that I made today on Twitter, it was Kirk Cousins doing the same exact thing. So he was in the pocket. He had to make a step with his right foot. So his right foot was throwing arm side. So we say right-handed, going to the right, throwing arm side. He got to make one step, had to disassociate or close like you see Carson Wentz is doing right here. You see how his left shoulder is getting to the target, creating the rotational energy through his back hip so that he could drive and throw the target. So this is something, again, that you guys can do just like Austin's doing in the video to the wall. And notice he does not start in a square or loaded position to the target as if he's getting ready to throw. He starts almost balanced with his chest there and has to create the ground force of the rotational energy in order to make the throw.
Right. And if you look at this screenshot right here, if we tilt it sideways, it's the exact same drill that we're doing here. And you see how, if you can see the mouse here, if you can look at this angle that he's going at, he's balanced and all his weight is in the center of his body in that posterior.
That's one thing I don't think quarterbacks realize, and it's one of the most surprising things for me as I was kind of learning all of these things is really when you're off platform, you can throw the exact same way, kinematic sequence wise off platform. I mean, essentially, if you took the ground and tilted it, he looks exactly like he would if he was standing up, like Caleb was saying. And that's one thing I don't think people realize that a lot. There's some cool shots of Derek Jeter when he's doing his, legendary throw that he would do where he would get the ball off the gap and then jump up and throw it. And if you pause it while he's in the air, it looks like he's actually standing on ground. So you can create energy. You can maximize your potential inside and outside the pocket. It's something that really, once you get that feel, it's really difficult to lose. And that's something that can take you from a D1 recruit or a D2 recruit to a Power 5 guy. I mean, it's something, I feel like if I would have had this information and had that feel of resisting rotation, if I had that 2 or 3 years earlier, I feel like I'd probably still be playing instead of, coaching, but here we are.
Now, when we go into this next drill, this is the step behind drill. And this is kind of where we really get into the arm strength, really trying to get that sequence going, moving forward. This is really going to help you with that hitch. Technically in the game, you probably won't ever step behind, but it's going to really teach you how to load that posterior the right way. As you see there, you have no other choice but to get in the hamstring glute area. And the trick with this drill, and a teaching point for some of the new guys that do it, once we get in this position, we've got to maintain this position as we move out. So I can back this up in the right spot here.
So that's like we're actively getting in the position where we're ready to throw, right? We're actively creating the spiral and creating the coil so that we can generate the ground force. So you don't want, if you see what his back foot does here, it's not going to shoot forward and be the first thing that starts going forward like it did in the earlier videos. When we say resist rotation, we want to stay in this back hip. We want to stay in this back hip and loaded for as long as possible. So as long as you can keep the energy back there, you want to do that and let the arm start speeding things up, not thinking about it in terms of the hip going first.
Kind of how and there's probably a lot of people that hear that comment from Q, and that's probably the first time they've heard it put that way because they think it might disagree with a little science. But the science actually behind that is that your body has a ton of these muscle spindles that go all the way around your body. And when these muscle spindles are tight, that's when you kind of get that rubber band effect. Now, when you actively try to turn the hips, open the hips, try to use that lower half a little too much, try to drive off that back foot, that's when your rubber band is going to get loose. And when that band gets loose, you lose that effortless energy that you see all these NFL guys have. So you might hear a guy's kinematic sequence where his hips decelerate first, and that's 100% correct. But the best way to decelerate the hips is this way. We're not trying to accelerate the hips first and then just hope they stop. We want to keep it tight so they reactively move the correct way. So if we look at this drill right here, I talked about.
Caleb, can you guys bring it back just so people can see the step behind portion so that they understand when they do this at home, why we're doing this and how it looks. So if you see Austin puts his left foot behind his right, creates the coil so that when he loads up, his foot hits and he's staying back and staying loaded.
Right. And the hard part is trying to maintain in the posterior. So when I'm especially working with a younger guy in high school or something, the main thing to get him to focus on is holding that resistance, because a lot of guys get in a bad habit of trying or having to actively use their lower half. Having to muscle the ball is a common term in football. And if you can just get them to trust that keeping that rubber band tight's the way to go, and you develop the feel for it, you're able to translate that into the game. So this is a huge field drill.
And honestly, as an athlete, this drill right here, I think, helped me understand what exactly Caleb was talking about in terms of feeling that resistance in my hip. Because when you step behind, you have to do more work to get out of it than you do to stay in it. You've already put yourself in a really good position by just stepping behind. If you can just stay in that hip with that foot exactly where it was when it was behind you, then you're going to be in a really good position to start feeling exactly what we're talking about and start implementing into the rest of the drills and your throws.
And now, if we look at Mahomes, and he's throwing his deep balls just like he does before every game. If we look at how Mahomes works his lower body in that same fashion here, keeping all of his weight in that posterior, just like he was stepping behind. And so this drill is going to translate a lot to the deep ball. We watch Mahomes here and Austin and kind of see how the lower half works similar.
Perfect.
Right.
So the next thing that we're going to get to is Austin going to be doing a reactionary drill. That's still going to force him to get loaded in his hip in the same way as we did with the step behind without stepping behind. So Caleb's going to play it so you can see him. This isn't something that we typically do, popping like this, but it does a good job in helping him create or actively create that rotation. And you can see it if you really start looking at his back hip. It does a really good job loading. You see that load? So that's when we talk about this active load. You see how you'd almost see it looks like he's opening his pelvis to you to start the motion, but he's really actively creating the rotation there.
That's it right there, yeah.
So this is the frame we're kind of looking for. You can see how his whole ground here, which is a good sign of, we can kind of see he's in that hamstring. He's loaded up. This is the drill where we tie it all together. So we're doing the other drills, kind of getting that feel, working on the off-platform throws. This is where we put it all together with the timing aspect, where we're not controlling the timing. Most often we'll have another guy who's doing the drill or the guy who's leading the drill to do either a clap or some sort of cue word to when to make the throw. Right. So if you can react to what the guy's saying, just like you're going to have to react in the game, and create that energy quick and get rid of the ball efficiently.
This is something that you saw me bouncing there at the beginning. I came to Caleb and we were like, we got to find something where we can take this immediately to the practice field, make it something as most game-like as possible. And so I'm just trying to simulate that you're at the top of your drop. You've taken your 3-step in a hitch, and you're just standing there surveying the field, going through your progressions. And so you can do this however you want it, whether it's actually going through your play. You can tie it to the progressions and the concepts you have at your school. But for me, this was just about mentally picturing someone popping open and then sticking my foot in the ground and letting that energy spiral up through my body.
All right. So we see Austin. When we talk about Austin, you saw where his throwing mechanics were earlier. This is after he went through all the drills. He gained 9 miles velocity. His deep ball ended up going up by 11 yards, and this is kind of where he finished his collegiate playing career at. See it, the reaction drill, quick plant, teaching the body to fire quick. Deshaun doing the same motion. We'll go back and watch those guys do it one more time. Able to put that foot in the ground and go quick. All right, now here's one of our videos working with Jalen, kind of doing the same drill. We went through a couple different cues with Jalen to kind of trick his mind into moving the most efficient way. And this is a clip of him doing that same drill.
Can you go back to Jalen's? I want them to see something that I think is really important in this. And this is something that we actually changed with Jalen throughout the pre-draft process. When he would do things like this, his front toe would open automatically to the target, right? The first thing that happened was his toe would open to the target, and he would lose a good bit of rotational energy because his hip opens, forcing his front shoulder to open as well. That's not what we want. So we want to keep the heel closed to the target for as long as possible to stay loaded so we can kind of feel ourselves staying tight, staying close. He doesn't do as good a job as Austin in terms of creating the load prior to the throw, but keeping his foot square is going to help him from his toe opening up, losing the energy, and that energy spiraling out a little bit earlier.
Yeah, and Jalen's a guy who's a really good athlete, really strong guy, big guy in the weight room, and he was able to get away with a lot of things, you know, that a lot of us couldn't. And so he was able to do some things with his pure arm talent that a lot of us normal guys could not do. So whenever we were able to get him to sequence up just a little bit better, it added that much arm strength, that much accuracy to his game. We'll watch him make this throw one more time. All right, and one of our last drills here, it's more of an advanced drill, I would say, but it's a scissor drill, and it shows an active resistance with that lower half like we talked about. I wouldn't do this necessarily with somebody the first time I worked with them. This is more of an advanced step, and this kind of is showing a reactive movement with our lower half whenever we're in sequence the right way. So everybody sees how that foot kicks back. And that's something that a lot of coaches wouldn't believe in until you kind of show them some NFL guys on film a little bit slower. And we'll go through that right now. So right here we look at Rodgers, same motion. PJ Walker. Video from Deshaun. Justin Fields. And then we got Dwayne. So it's a movement that a lot of guys don't necessarily think about. But it shows a good active resistance that we're trying to get by pulling that rubber band back.
I know the video is a little bit choppy, and we'll be able to send a good bit of this stuff out to you guys. I know we had a few questions. As you guys, I think we can do the hand feature. So if you raise your hand, I think that I can quickly pop you in. I know that there was some questions because this stuff is a little bit more complex than a lot of the other things that we talked about in terms of movement keys and things like that. So, all right, got some hands. Bryce, you may know how to do the thing better than me because I can't.
Front heel stay close.
I'm trying to see who actually raised their hand. All right, let me see.
All right, which question? What we on? He's
All right, type in. I'm just trying to see who actually raised their hand. Yeah, I don't know why I can't see who's asking questions.
There you go, Frankie.
Bryce, do you see if you type in the names of anybody who raised their, or just type in the chat if you have a question, and I'll let you. I'll make sure you can talk.
We see some here in this question and answer. Is that no?
No, it's not. Oh, I see it. Let's Trent, bring you up first.
Let's see.
Trent, you're on. Trent. All right, Miles Holder, I'll pull you up.
Hello, Coach. You hear me?
Yep, we can hear you perfect.
I just had a quick question about it. So I was watching you guys' load and throw, basically, and you guys are basically talking about targeting the back hip before you want us to load and throw.
Mommy placed in that picture.
But is what you guys want is basically, is that in all the throws, or is that certain, as in like you want it as in the deep or intermediate or as in short? But how would you explain that, like, meaning wise? For you want that as in for every throw, or just in for like depending on the route?
I like kind of how you worded that load and throw. I think maybe there's a little misunderstanding with the hip. No, all of these throws implement that. Any throw you throw on the football field, you definitely can implement what we've been talking about. But the main thing, I think you mentioned something about the hip opening up. If you could go into detail with that, what you meant by that.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, like say I was throwing, because I'm right-handed, so say if I'm throwing left-handed, I would want to lead with my my first foot first, my left foot first, basically, and then be before I'm opening like my pelvis, like what Coach Avery just said.
Right.
Basically, yeah, just open our pelvis and then following through with our back hip to give us that rest of the power and arm just coming through, right?
Yes. What I would say to that, and I don't mean to cut you off, is
no, you're good, so.
I would never think about opening my pelvis. I would think about closing it. It looked that way from the way we were looking at it on camera.
Yeah.
You were seeing the back of me. But as me, the quarterback, and I'll stand up here just to show you, I would want to close my pelvis to the target. So I'm left-handed, obviously. I wouldn't want to open. I want to close it and hold that position as long as possible.
So what is going to open that pelvis up? I'll show him again. So once he's loaded here, what's going to open him up is his action of throwing the ball, and that's what's going to make him actually rotate. But it's an active movement, and not necessarily like he's not necessarily trying to open up, but it's just happening because of the way he's got that rubber band like we talked about.
And the equal opposite. Quincy brought up a good point earlier with the equal opposite. When you get to equal opposite, as soon as you begin to externally rotate, that's when the hips will actually open up. That's a good way to look at it as a quarterback. If you're watching film of yourself throwing, okay, if I'm at equal opposite, my hips are still closed, good. But at this point, they should start to open up.
Okay, that makes sense.
Don't try and actively open your hips. That's something that will happen naturally. All you got to think about is staying your back hip for as long as possible. Don't think about the opening portion. Let that happen on its own because it will. Like, your body is made to throw. Like, if you just go back to history, we're like created to throw rocks. Same with our body. Like, we'll do it correctly as long as we're not thinking like actively open our hips. Just let your body work and you'll be fine.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah. It's more of like a compact throw. I see what he's kind of saying now.
One of the last things I'll say on your question is when I first worked with Jamie Newman, Jamie was a guy, big, strong guy that could get away with whenever he would warm up, he really wouldn't activate his lower half, kind of like you said. You know, he wouldn't. He was all arm when he would warm up. So I kind of challenged him last season every time he threw the ball to really incorporate and use his lower half the correct way, as opposed to just get away and create bad habits while he's warming up.
Yes, I appreciate that, you guys.
Appreciate you, Miles. I'm Chase Griffin. I'm about to pull you up. Jeezy.
What's good? Thank you for having me.
Nah. Yeah, I can hear you great. How you living?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Blessed.
Good. Well, I was just wondering, we have a lot of free time off, so the workouts that we do are sort of up to us. Are there any lifts or exercises that we should avoid that could mess with parts of the sequence?
Yeah,
I'll let Caleb handle that one.
Yeah, there's one main one I can think of, and it's probably the most common, where you see guys get the medicine ball and they'll throw them up against the wall, trying to use that lower half. And that's the way it's taught by a lot of people, really trying to turn those hips when they throw. And there's a way to do that with the medicine ball, but not trying to actively use the lower half, trying to throw it as far as you can by keeping that rubber band tight, not actively trying to rotate the hips.
And when he's saying medicine ball, correct me if I'm wrong, he's meaning the big
Right.
Right.
Big one where he's pushing it like
Not
this.
the ones that we were throwing in the videos, but the actual big.
Right.
You don't want to, like, he brings up a really good point, because as a quarterback myself, I would love doing that drill after workouts. I felt like I could do a little extra to be better. And I'm throwing that medicine ball up against the wall as hard as I can. But what I'm doing, and I'll get back up and show you this, I'm teaching myself to completely get out of sequence. I'm flying my hip open to throw that medicine ball. What we want to do is resist and keep our hip closed as long as possible. So when you're up there and you're throwing that medicine ball as hard as you can, you're actually getting really good at being back. And that's what we don't want to do.
And
We got some really good videos of Jalen Hurts doing that medicine ball exercise. So the medicine ball exercise where resisting rotation and keeping our foot behind is a really good one, Chase. And then the medicine ball exercise where we're working on our sequence, we're exploding up and slamming down. Caleb has those, and what I'll do, is that what you're about to show him? I will make sure that everybody who's on tonight, I email those two drills that you can do with the medicine ball. But you can show them quickly, Caleb. I think that'd be helpful.
Thank you.
one last thing on the other one, you want to make sure it's a scoop throw and just doing the push. I just like to avoid anything when it comes to rotational athletes with the push as much as we can. So a scoop throw, hands underneath the ball. But when talking medicine ball slam, just kind of how we're creating that power in a small space, using the lower half, getting a good core activation is also a good one that we'll send on the email.
Thank you.
Jeezy, appreciate you, bro.
Thank you.
Jason, bring you up. Boom. Jason, what's going on?
What's up, Coach?
Man, trying to be cool like you.
Nah, Coach, you the man, not me. I want to first of all say thank you for this little webinar. Appreciate it, fellas, expanding the drill. But I had two-part question. First question was, could you please explain, elaborate on the follow through of the throw? And then I had a question about the front heel. I guess does the front heel stay closed, or does it ever open up after? I guess through the throw or through the follow through.
Okay, I'm going to answer them in reverse order. I'll start with the heel one first. Keeping the heel closed is a really good cue for some people. For other people, it's not. It kind of, because everybody's kind of built different, how their hips are built, flexibilities wise. But you'll see most people's foot open up when we get in that external rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Austin, and that's what we're talking about. Whenever you actively go to throw, if it opens up, that's fine. It's when you open up, when you're still here, that's when you get in trouble. And then,
oh yeah, the back. Were you talking about finishing through, following through your throw? Was that the first question
Yes,
there?
Yes,
So,
sir.
a lot of coaches will tell you to get the dollar out of your pocket and finish your hips all the way through. And that first video when I was throwing, that's what I was thinking. Get all the way through. Get everything through the target. And essentially that's just wasting a lot of energy. And really you're not taking the energy that you've created to your target. You're taking it away from it. So you're losing so many RPMs on the football.
and I would say that the follow through is more of a reaction of you doing the things right earlier in the throw. I probably wouldn't worry about your follow through. I would focus on the things that happened before that external rotation move.
Right. And some guys like to come up on their toe. Like you'll see Tom Brady and a lot of those guys. A lot of coaches will take still shots and put that up on Twitter or post pictures of it. And that's really not the way to look at it. Like Caleb said, there's a lot of things that happen before that. You just can't coach the end of it. Like the Dak Prescott drill. When he started doing that pregame, if everyone just starts doing that drill, they're not really understanding what's happening in order to get to the end point of what he's trying to do. So what I would say is just focus on putting that energy to the ground, keeping those hips closed long as possible, and that's going to help you with the follow through. There's a lot of things to get to that point. I hope that somewhat answers the question because there's a lot of layers to that. That's a really good question.
So basically, the follow through is basically the initial stages of the throw, but basically the follow through would happen naturally, is what you're saying.
It's the result of a lot of things happening. And so I would never make anything active about your follow through.
Okay.
Meaning I would never coach someone to say, all right, get your hips all the way through and have your opposite or your throwing shoulder face your target. Just the follow through is going to happen. It's a result of a lot of things previous happening.
Okay. Thank you, fellas. I appreciate it.
Jason. Yeah. Josh, what up? I think you're going to ask about keeping the weight in our back foot. Is that what you were asking about?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can
Yes.
hear you just fine.
Okay, so I have my first question and then I have my second question. So to answer my first question, whenever you're talking about putting all your weight onto the back foot or the posterior change, does that allow whenever you like follow through to kick the foot back, or does that just happen naturally? And then my second question is, I've been going to a lot of these camps, and I went to the Tom Brady, Tom House coach camp last year, and he talked about deceleration and acceleration with arms and hips, and he said to accelerate to decelerate. So that's like kind of opposite of what you guys were talking about, because in your notes you guys said to decelerate the hips first. Would you mind like elaborating on how that would work?
Right. And we want to build guys that go in and they throw with a K vest or some sort of sensor on that kind of shows that data. And
Yeah.
we want them to do the hip, thorax, arm, ball, right? That's the deceleration pattern we want. But what we're saying is there's, for a lot of guys, there's a different way to teach that, right? If you look at a lot of data, any rotational athletes, the hips don't necessarily accelerate first. For a lot of people, they might, but there's normally a psychological effect that's going on with the action to throw the ball or to swing if we're talking baseball. So that's what I would say on that. And what was the first question, Austin?
Talking about our foot going back when we keep our energy back there. So don't use the term all. Like you don't want to say, I want to have all my weight anywhere. You just want to stay loaded in your back half. And the scissors is a product of that because you're resisting rotation. So that is what causes those guys to have their foot initially move backwards.
Gotcha.
And then that's the only thing we want to talk about, that initial part, and let everything else happen naturally.
Like,
So that makes sense, Josh?
Yes, that'll answer all my questions. Thank you, guys.
yeah. And one last thing on the scissor, it's really weird to understand. It makes no sense that your foot goes backwards. But one thing that kind of helped me piece it together was think about a vertical jump. If you're going to do a vertical jump, you're going to go down to go up. So when you're creating a cross-body movement, that back foot's got to go back. Every force, every action has an equal or opposite reaction. And that's what's happening here from a physics standpoint.
Gavin, got you popped up. Gavin, what's going on? Gavin?
Hello.
Gavin, what up?
How often do you suggest we do these workouts? Like once a week, 3 times a week? How often do you suggest it?
It just depends where you are. And we've got a plan actually laid out for guys that are like just starting the program. So they keep their arm healthy and they build up. But I mean, for guys like Jamie Newman or other guys that would do this program just about every day, once they've built it up, you know, as long as you're using the correct throwing mechanics, it's something you can do every day. But like we said, we've got a 6-week on-ramp program to kind of make sure that your arm's getting in shape and well conditioned before you start up.
And Gavin, you're like in 8th or 9th grade, if I remember correctly. So I'd say for you, where you're at, probably like 3 times a week.
Right.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Yeah. All right. I remember everybody comes to every camp. Evan, what's going on?
Hello. I had a question about when you have all the weight and all the power in your back ear stance. So when I have a tendency to shift my weight to the front of my stance.
So you're making it a linear movement rather than a rotational movement is what we call that?
Okay. So
Uh-huh.
if I want to keep, I have a tendency to straighten out my front leg. So, and I feel like that takes a lot of the power away. So you want us to shift the weight from our back of our stance, and then it naturally comes through our follow through.
Right.
So, yeah, that makes sense. I'll let you answer that, Caleb, because I want to hear what you're going to say, but I think that I'll have some color put on it.
Well, the first thing you said kind of threw me off. You said I start with all of my weight back in my stance. And that's kind of got me thinking, which of course I haven't seen you throw or anything, but that's what we call all back, all forward. When you you never load. Your weight might be on your back side, but now when you go to throw, everything just goes forward. So you're never really getting loaded. So I would say stay balanced. And then whenever you make your forward move, to kind of stay in that load as long as possible.
All right.
Imagine if I was going to throw a punch, would you rather me jump to that front foot, then punch, or shift my weight at the same time?
Yeah, that makes sense. I worded that wrong. I was trying to talk about how when I'm mid throwing motion, that's what I was starting, like at the top of your drop, when you're staying balanced, and then you get ready to throw, you kind of like have more ground force in the back of your stance to lead to the front, to the follow through.
So Evan, I know exactly what you're saying. And Evan, don't let those terms or ground force, all that stuff like that confuse you. Just try and keep the energy on your backside as long as possible. For you, and I can envision what you're saying, and I know it's hard to coach somebody without seeing it. Try and throw some of that with eliminating your stride for a bit. Like, just don't stride. Just keep your feet where they are, and try and do it rotationally but without striding. And then as you start figuring things out and you're going less forward and you're keeping things back, then you can start moving to that. Okay?
All right. Thank you.
Another thing really quick, Evan. One thing I was taught a lot as a quarterback was to push off my back leg, to push towards my target. And so what I would just ask you to do is the next time you throw, think about pushing down into the ground as opposed to pushing and getting into your throw.
Miles, I see your question. Guys, we want to talk about watching mechanics, who we look for. So I'm not even going to pull you up. I just want to make it quick. Deshaun does an excellent job in terms of rotation. Dwayne does an excellent job in terms of rotation. Kyler Murray is probably one of the best rotational athletes in the NFL. I would say watch Aaron Rodgers, but he does things so different than probably how you taught or the way you throw. You can look at him and catch some clues, but don't try and take your game away from him. And I think I said Mahomes. Mahomes does a great job too. So those are just some guys that I would watch. Russell Wilson also does. He locks out his front leg. I'm not sure exactly what is to that. Before I say good or bad, I would want to start diving into exactly why. So, all right, Mike Archambault, hop on. Mike, what's going on?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you perfect.
Okay, awesome. Hey, I've got an awesome 11-year-old young man who is not willing to ask the question, so I'll try to keep it as basic as possible. He is kind of starting out at the quarterback position, and a lot of what you guys are talking about is extremely technical. But we are watching and trying to piece together what you're saying. What suggestions do you have for an 11-year-old young man who just wants to kind of put together and try to be the best that he can for next year? Thank you.
I'll handle that one, fellas. So before you start doing anything too complex, I would just start trying to understand where I need to get to in terms of the throwing motion. I wouldn't do that with the football. I'd probably put a towel in my hand, do some of those things in terms of getting the equal opposite. You can, I think you can just hop on my YouTube page, figure out how to get into the right spot for foot strike, then get into this right spot in terms of vertical L, and then just how to follow through and staying close. So do that right now. Then you can probably maybe pick up a lighter or a smaller ball, start working with that. And then after you start getting your body in the right spot, then you can kind of work forward from there.
Watch as much football as possible. Stay around the game.
One thing with young kids, too, he can, at this point of his growing age, he can almost learn how to throw correctly just by trying to throw as hard and as far as he can at this age. His body will self-organize. It has the chance to, where maybe when he gets to be 15, 16, 17, this just comes natural. So when in doubt with a young kid, have him try to throw it hard and far while spinning it correctly as much as possible.
Yeah,
you
and
guys are awesome, man. Thank you.
Mike, more young guys get coached poorly, and it sets them back more than they get coached right. So I would rather you try and throw hard by yourself than go to a quarterback coach where you're trying to save. Like, it makes more sense to just coach yourself and throw hard than to like go to a not so good quarterback coach, because they'll probably send you in the wrong direction than the right.
Right. Yeah.
Kyle, what's going on?
Can you guys hear me?
I can
Yes.
hear you perfect.
Awesome. I had two questions real quick. Just talking about having your heel staying closed. You're talking about your front lead foot. Just trying to create that torque. So I've always been taught when you're throwing towards the target, trying to open up to the left of the target almost, so opening the foot all the way over, then kind of engaging your hips once you create the separation from like the opposite equal, what Quincy was talking about. But I like how you guys were saying.
Yeah, I was taught the same thing, and I taught the same thing for a really long time. So I'm not going to say like whoever's teaching is like teaching you wayward wrong, but just as you start diving into science, you don't need to do that as much. You can go right at the target. Some guys can even close up and do the same things. Like there's a lot of different ways you can get to it. Just make sure that you're really, really comfortable and you don't open too early.
Okay.
Caleb,
So
also,
are you talking about like opening like hips wise?
I'm saying like if this is your body right here and these are your feet, you're saying that you feel like you need to step there to get your hips through, right? That's what you're saying?
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
You don't need to do that is what I'm saying. You don't have to do that. You can, and it's helpful, but don't feel like it's a requirement. Just start finding a way to get yourself in a good spot and feel comfortable.
Awesome, for sure. And I had one more question too. I've heard a lot of stuff about kind of how the back foot should end and the back leg ending throws kind of thing. What would you say on being rotational and getting your hips like all the way through the throw almost?
So I would change your viewpoint on rotational, and it's not getting your hips through it. It's keeping your hips back as long as possible. So with the foot opening up, like you were talking about, that's opening your hips just a little bit early. And so if you can keep that back heel out, like Caleb was talking about, like we worked with Jalen, that's going to keep your hips closed longer. And that's going to create the rotational power that we've been talking about, as well as the finish that you're talking about. You don't have to really worry about finishing through. If you keep those hips closed, if you stay resisting that rotation, the follow through is going to happen. So I would kind of reframe exactly how I'm thinking about rotation. I wouldn't actively try to rotate. That's something that's going to be a reaction to everything else that's going on.
I've got one quick thing I think that might answer a lot of questions, because I know what we're saying is a little bit different than what most people teach. But if you think of it like as a vertical jump, right? So I know this is sagittal plane, but if you think of it like a vertical jump, when you go down to jump, can you jump higher from here where your hamstrings and glutes are involved, or can you jump higher from here? If you stand up, then try to jump, you're all calf. If you got some big calves, you practice that a lot, you're going to get pretty good at it. But I promise once you learn how to jump from right here, you're going to have more muscle, that rubber band's pulled back tight, you're going to jump higher or throw harder, farther, and more accurate.
Cool. Kyle, appreciate it. Let's hop on Walker Wood. We got two more after Walker. Walker, what up, bro?
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah,
Walker.
What's up, my man? My question though was about the scissor kick. So like, what point in like the throwing sequence should the foot like really go backwards? So I know you guys talked about equal and opposite, that like the foot should be like the back foot is like swinging forward. So like when we're working on that, at what point in the throwing sequence should our foot really go back? And when we're holding that hip back, like if we're focusing on that, is it naturally gonna happen?
Yeah, so I mean, it's not something like there's several drills you could do to kind of feel that extra resistance with the scissor. That's why I've talked about it being a very advanced drill. But one thing I would say is if you're watching video, it happens right around the release of the football is when that foot will kind of slide back. And then you follow through as the guy comes around, you'll see that back foot come out a little bit. But most of the time it'll be right around release. And if you want to do that drill, a good way to work into it is Q, if you could explain it, that baseball drill I sent you with the softball girl with your
Oh, shit. Oh, shoot. My bad. Yeah. That is that is a high level drill. Walker, I'll send it to you because I don't want everybody to just try it right now. Like, I want you guys thinking about like how can you make things simple.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it. I'm gonna have Neil, then Moose hop on, and then we'll be done. Neil, what's going on?
How you doing, Coach? Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
All right. Hey, how y'all doing? So I just had a quick question. I noticed that when y'all were showing the drills, it's about upper body, but I noticed when you were showing the drills, and Austin was doing them, I don't know if it's because of the medicine ball weight or what, but when he would turn to create the torque, I noticed like the ball, the medicine ball would kind of dip down a little bit, and the elbow would be up, and then your forearm would dip. I have a problem with that on some of my deeper throws, and I was just wondering how you can, what's some drills that I can do or something I can do to work on that and my separation from my carriage separation.
So you're talking about an equal opposite, your arm going less than horizontal?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I wouldn't worry about
it. Is it becoming a problem? Like, unless you're doing it to overcompensate and you really don't do it any other time? Like,
yeah, no, that's really it. Like, it's on deeper throws. And then like it was that, and then one other issue I have is like sometimes I'll like raise the ball a little bit, like slightly before I throw. So I'm just working on separation straight from the carriage. But that was one problem that I had, just to speeding up my release. And then yeah, it's the dipping only really comes on like the farther throws to overcompensate for some power that I'm lacking, even though I can generate it.
Neil, what I would recommend is you to do like some band work, correct push-ups, because I would say it's kind of how your scapula sits, kind of rather upper trap wise, lat wise. See, Austin, especially when he was playing, was very upper trap dominant, right? So you'd see that elbow come up because that's kind of how his scap worked. Then you see other guys, necessarily like a guy with a big bench press. Jordan Yates comes to mind, the quarterback Georgia Tech. He'll drop the ball a little bit lower, which is fine. You see a lot of successful guys.
Russell Wilson.
You see a lot of successful guys. But what I'm telling you is you want that scap to work based on how you're built. If you're trying to go straight up and that's not how you're built, that's when you're going to run into problems. What I would recommend is to do a lot of band work and really focus on, if you're doing like a push-pull, really focus on your lower traps, kind of right there in the middle doing the work. And if you're a little lat dominant, dropping low, you can flare your elbow out more to kind of get into that upper trap. And if you're too upper trap dominant like Austin, tuck that elbow in to get more in the lat. But you want to be right in the middle. Like even if you're doing a push-up, you'll see a lot of guys get here, a lot of guys get here. You want to be right in the middle, right where that lower trap's working the right way.
Quick thing, because I actually, he mentioned I was upper trap dominant. That's because I did push-pull long my entire life. And eventually I learned how to do them the correct way. What you want to do when you pinch your scaps, you want to pinch them back, yes, but you also want to pull them down. A lot of people just pinch them back, and then you get that tightness in your traps. So pinch back and then down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, Neil. Last one, Big Moose. Moose, what up? Moose.
Thank you.
Hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. What up?
Okay, I got a question. I have a tendency to open my shoulder every 5 or so throws. Is there any like tips you have at home to stay consistent and just keep my shoulder closed?
He broke up a ton for me. Did you guys hear that?
I got a little bit of it. I think he's saying his front side's flying open. I think that's what we got.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, so I would just say it's kind of cool how that's probably an effect. It's not necessarily the cause. I would say the cause with the lower half.
And Moose, I'll shoot you. We can talk. This is happening with echo.
Yeah, I can hear that too. I'm breaking up real bad.
All right.
Hey, Quincy, we got a question down here from Kyle Peters. I think it's a really good question because.
All right, let's finish up with this. This is gonna be the last question, and then we'll roll out.
Gotcha.
Go ahead, Tony. You can answer it. I see it, but say the question too, so they can hear it.
Right. So he says, should the hips not lead the elbow, or will it just happen naturally? I'll let Caleb answer this first, and then I'll fill in the blanks if there's any.
The hips definitely lead the elbow, but in order to get the hips to lead the elbow, I would not think of it that way. But it kind of goes against field versus real. That's a big debate there. But the main thing is a good way to see it is kind of put some guys on video, ask them their feel. Like a lot of golfers, a lot of baseball players think hands first, even though their lower half will decelerate first. Of course, for the energy to transfer up, the lower half's going to decelerate first. But in order to keep that rubber band tight so it does decelerate first, a lot of good players will get the arm through first.
Right, and there's a really good video online about Tiger Woods and how he's talking about his feel through a swing. And I like to say playing quarterback's a lot like playing golf in a shitstorm. There's a lot going on. But the thing is, when you're swinging your club, and this is what Tiger says, he feels his hands come through and his hips follow. It's all about being active versus reactive. We want to be reactive. And so when you're trying to actively rotate, you're going to run into a lot of problems, and you're going to get really good at being back. If you react, which is your hips are falling behind your elbow in the field, not what's actually happening, you'll find more success. So I hope that answers that question. That's a big debate in the rotational community. The hip does lead the elbow, but like he said, it's a feel thing. You want to keep that hip closed as long as possible.
Everybody, I really appreciate you guys hopping on. We had a good number of participants. You guys asked a ton of great questions. If you guys DM me any more questions, I will be sure to answer them the best way I can. That's Caleb. That's Austin. Thank you guys again. If you guys are looking for where to get the band to the balls, you can shoot me a DM on that as well on Instagram, or I don't use Snap. You can use Instagram. I mean, you can hit me up on Instagram or Twitter, and I got you. I will get you anything you need. Thanks again. Oh, if you guys want to try this out, it's actually some good stuff. Deshaun actually put me on this Cervita, A Higher Way of Life, but it's my new supplement game. So I'll let you guys. Thank you.